Here on the ground, change happens fast. Problems feel frequent and urgent. It's loud and anxiety runs high. From a satellite view, the Earth looks the same as it did thousands of years ago. We've been here before. Let's learn from our past and shoot for a better future.
Hello and welcome to this episode of A Satellite View. I'm Todd Mikkelson, your host, speaking at you from Sunday, October 26th, 2025, in the space and time continuum. Took last weekend off. Wasn't expecting to necessarily, but wow, it was really good for me. Remember, we got to take care of ourselves. We had our friends, you hear me talk about Doug from out east. He came with his wife and stayed at our place for the weekend, and we just had an incredible time. And the weather ended up being unexpectedly perfect. It was just really great, and I took the weekend off. I decided at the last minute, I'm not going to do the podcast this weekend. And doing it now this week, I'm not going to go back 2 weeks. I'm just going to go back 1 week, except for, of course, we all know about the destruction of the East Wing that occurred beginning on Friday, the 17th of October, and that, of course, was planned as a distraction to the No Kings protests that happened on Saturday. And we drove through a couple of the places where the protests were going on, and I talked to some other people. And wow, here in the Twin Cities, just in Minneapolis, St. Paul, they estimate up to 150,000 people just in Minneapolis and St. Paul. And apparently that Minneapolis was kind of a star in it, one of the best attended. And we drove to a place that is kind of, I would say it's about 25 miles away from Minneapolis, and not necessarily, kind of a red zone normally, not totally red, but we figured it was about a third of a mile or a little more of just absolutely jam-packed people. A few thousand people, I would say. A couple to a few thousand people just where we were. And we drove through and honked our horn and yelled, and everybody had signs, and it was just great. It was incredible. The power of the people will win. And we're going to talk more about that going into this show. I want to point something out. Since Donald Trump descended that golden escalator in 2015, the Republican Party has devolved into a cult of personality that mirrors the worst authoritarian regimes of the last 100 years. News to you, right? Well, that's not me saying that. That is Miles Brunner, a big GOP fundraising strategist for Campaign Solutions, one of the biggest fundraising entities of the Republican Party, of the GOP, Guardians of Pedophile Party. Miles Brunner is resigning from the Republican Party, one of the biggest fundraising juggernauts in the Republican Party. He writes, "For 10 years, the GOP has waged an unrelenting war on our civic institutions, the separation of powers, the foundation of the rule of law, and the very nature of truth itself. While Trump and his supporters in Congress have been the driving force behind the right's descent into despotism, I think is how you pronounce it, it would not have been possible without the thousands of consultants, aides, and politicos working behind the scenes to fully execute their systematic dismantling of American democratic norms." Brunner said that much of his job at Campaign Solutions revolved around drafting fundraising emails designed to out-MAGA the previous. I guess that means in the second administration. It was routine to publish content that pushed election fraud conspiracies, stoked anti-immigrant sentiment, and sowed distrust in our institutions, he wrote. So basically he's saying, my job was to put out emails that was complete propaganda, similar to what the Putin regime does in Russia. He described becoming disillusioned while working as a political coordinator for a moderate California state senator at the time in 2016 and 17. Bruner said he tried desperately to distance this person who was running for state senator from Trump during the 2016 campaign and hoped that Trump's very fine people on both sides, response to the deadly far-right rally in Charlottesville, Virginia in 2017 would provide a perfect opportunity to break away. And then that candidate chickened out, reportedly unhappy with the statement that her team released describing Heather Heyer, the woman who was killed by a white supremacist during a demonstration opposing neo-Nazis. If you remember, Heather Heyer was there demonstrating against the pro-Nazi rally that was going on. She was described as an American hero by this candidate's statement, and the candidate chickened out. The staff stressed to her that Heyer had indeed been killed by a terrorist for protesting Nazis in her city. Candidate still chickened out. And now Miles Bruner is urging all Republicans to leave Trump. Leave it. Get out. He's kind of punishing himself for staying in so long. And of course, Marjorie Taylor Greene seemingly has turned completely against Trump at this point. We heard a couple weeks ago Eric Swalwell say, if this vote comes up to release the Epstein files, he has been told that about 100 Republicans will jump the Trump ship and vote in favor of that. Very interesting. I also heard, I'm just going to go down my list here, so it might not make sense, the order that we do things here. But, and I also want to point out that this week alone is so jam-packed with unbelievable developments. I would say most of them good, that I just had to edit it down because I would need an hour show. And I don't think you're ready to take an hour-long ride in your car because you might need to show up at the grocery store or at work, right? This is your normal drive. I keep this at about a half an hour, half hour to 40 minutes, so that it's listenable. Maybe I should start doing 2 shows. I don't know. But then soon, when Trump is gone, maybe things will calm down and we can just have fun for a half an hour a week. I don't know. We'll see. But things are getting really interesting. I wrote in my notes, and this starting on October 21st, which is 5 days ago. And again, seems like forever ago. I almost cut the story I just told you out, but I thought it's important to remember that big, important Republicans are leaving the Republican Party. Marjorie Taylor Greene's not leaving the Republican Party, but it seems that I don't even think she's leaving MAGA, but she's almost totally against Trump. She's against sending money to $40 billion to who? I can't remember the name of the country right now. Not Venezuela. Well, she's against going to war in Venezuela. She's against giving the Qataris a base in the United States. And of course, she wants the Epstein files released. And while I mentioned the Epstein files, I saw a really interesting interview with Epstein survivor Lisa Phillips. Now, she's the one who has a podcast, and she's the one who announced that they're going to be putting together their own list. It's up in the air as to how that list would be released because of litigation, and that a lot of people on this list are going to be extremely powerful. And people like Lisa Phillips fear for their own safety against these mobsters. And she pointed out something that was unexpected. She said, there's too much focus on Trump tied into the Epstein files. There is so much more to this than that. There are so many more people that need to be held responsible for their deeds. We're hearing about more from the release of Virginia, what's her name? Her book, Virginia Giuffre. Her book was released on Tuesday. It's starting to stir. I think we're going to hear more because of that book this coming week. it's already caused a big mess for Randy Andy, Prince Andrew. By the way, I'm not the one who made up that name. The people who know him over in Britain, oh, right, Randy Andy, right? You know what I mean. So it's caused a lot of problems for him. And the book coming out has caused a lot of problems for him. So it's really interesting. Let's get to what Lisa Phillips said. We shouldn't be focusing so much on the Donald Trump aspect of this because there's so much more to it. I have said here, and other people that I have said it to have agreed. This sexual pedophilia, the raping of young girls, is so horrific, but it's not the biggest part of this Epstein mess. Finances, money, banks, fraud, corruption, money laundering, blackmail. There's so much more to it than the salacious stuff. But the salacious stuff is important because it's not just salacious, it's a crime. And it's the most immoral, horrible piece of fucking shit thing anyone can do in raping children. That's what these people have done. A lot of them. Lisa Phillips knows some of them, and other survivors know there are hundreds. So she's pointing out this information needs to come out, and we need to stop just trying to tie Trump to it. Trump may or may not be in it. She doesn't even know. A lot of these women never interacted with Trump. Trump probably did a lot of, he was in business with Jeffrey Epstein. So I think Trump did do things to underage women and their girls because it sounds like there are photographs and there's probably tape. There was an under oath testimony about it. But most of these survivors who are coming out now say, I didn't really see Trump, but Trump was involved in the money part of it and the organizing part of it. Having his modeling agency and stuff. It's so disgusting and gross. But it's the fraud, the money laundering, the racketeering, all of this other stuff. There's a lot of crimes that have gone on under this information. Now, I want to point out that tied to people like Miles Brunner leaving the Republican Party, Oklahoma, West Virginia, Kentucky, places like this are being hurt the most by Trump's tariffs and other economic issues. Just the downturn of the economy right now. A lot of farmers. Trump voters are turning against him because of what he has been doing. He doesn't seem to care, and I don't know what he's got left of his brain. There was a big story about that. We probably won't. I have it in my notes, and I have some notes on it in my computer, but we might not even get to that, about a professional psychologist talking about, maybe it was a psychiatrist, talking about the obvious decline in his cognition. And it was big news with Joe Biden, even though he just showed more signs of aging as opposed to Alzheimer's. And the media doesn't care to talk about it when it's Donald Trump, even though it's so obvious. So many things to point out. I'm just going to keep repeating. I also want to point out, I heard on MSNBC, and I'm so disgusted by our media, but I stay listening to it to see if they're going to start to turn, and they do once in a while, and I have reported that on past episodes here. They started to talk about Ukraine and Russia war a couple weeks ago, then they kind of stopped again. I'm going to update you on some stuff with that. It seems to be getting really on the edge. It's pretty amazing. Even just developments this weekend and today coming out from that region. But I heard Steve Schmidt, who I think is an alarmist I don't know if he's a Republican anymore, but he was a Republican. He's the one who brought Sarah Palin into John McCain's race in 2008. But he has been anti-Trump, hugely anti-Trump, for the last 10 or more years. And I heard him repeating what I have said and what Kamala has said, and I found that really interesting. He said, first of all, when Trump is gone, that alone was a pretty big deal. And he's out, and this regime is taken down or finished. Do you think it's going to go back to the way it was? No, it's not. Americans need to start thinking about the structure of America for the future. Kamala has said that. I have said it. I've heard other people say it coming from all kinds of different directions. Trump's role was to tear everything down, and now he literally is with the East Wing. Tear everything down to expose what needs to be done to fix everything, because our systems are broke. That's what Kamala said. Our systems are broken, and I don't want to be a part of that. But then, in an interview in London just a couple days ago or less, she said, no, she's not done yet. She's going to be involved, but it's going to be with a different thing. And we all need to start thinking about what that's going to be, because we're the ones who are going to rebuild it. That's what she's saying. That's what Steve Schmidt's saying on MSNBC in the afternoon, not on the Rachel Maddow show, in the middle of these news quote-unquote shows during the day on MSNBC. It's getting really interesting, really interesting. I've got more super interesting, and what I think are huge signs of what is actually going on behind the scenes and going to show us what our future is, including our near future. Let's talk about that after we take a short break. We'll be right back. You're listening to A Satellite View. Satellite View. Go find our website, satelliteviewpodcast.com. Join our mailing list, our email list. Find our YouTube channel. Go to YouTube and search for Satellite View Podcast, and you'll find our YouTube channel. Subscribe. It's free. We're getting more and more views, both in a few different places. So that's very promising. It's good that people are paying such close attention, including you. So thank you for being here with us today. Let's talk about parts of Ukraine. Now, brand new reporting about it, what's actually going on in the Russian-Ukraine war, mostly in Russia, is pretty amazing, yet no surprise, because it's been leading toward all this, and so many experts are predicting, wow, I don't think it can last until Wednesday. That was said over Labor Day weekend by an expert on Russia. So again, it just keeps going slow. I'm learning way too much about it by looking into it and doing research for this show. But it's very interesting how Putin did plan for this and set up a lot of measures for their economy to withstand sanctions from the West and all kinds of things that he was expecting before he did this war. But he was also expecting to finish and win the war within a couple weeks. So now, everything's running out. But here's something I find really, really interesting that has to do with the United States. So there's a guy named Elbridge Colby. And he was working with Pete Hegseth, basically, in the Pentagon. And Donald Trump called Elbridge Colby, that's JD's guy. So, JD Vance is he thinks he's going to be president. This is proof of a lot of things. One of them being that JD Vance is totally working for Russia, in the best interest of Russia. It was reported in the Wall Street Journal, but now I have corroborated it with some interviews with some generals, that current Army general, current people, and they're talking about how big a deal this was. That happened about a week ago. Donald Trump was asked about it a few days ago, and he denied it, but it's also clear that he had no idea what the question was about. So that kind of doesn't count. He's just being left out of the loop at this point. And he just keeps saying stuff that everybody's like, yeah, whatever, man. He's saying Jack Smith planted the things in his Mar-a-Lago. Even his son, Eric, is saying that. Jack Smith wasn't a prosecutor yet. He wasn't he wasn't part of this yet when that happened. And then he's also saying that Jack Smith and all these other people overturned the 2020 election and did all this stuff before that, but he was president then. So none of these people were in power at all. And so everyone just lets it go because at this point, he's just the crazy old grandpa. Oh, grandpa, I know. They didn't do it. It's fake news. I know, grandpa, it's fake news. Well, Pete Hegseth seems to be ignored in the same way. And in fact, there were current modern generals, senior officers. There's a Washington Times article. Now, not the Washington Post. The Washington Times is a very MAGA rag. It's a very right-wing paper. And they had an article entitled, basically, "He Lost Us." And that's generals and senior officers talking about Pete Hegseth. We have lost all trust in him, especially after that silly stunt that he pulled about a month ago now. But he's being bypassed. It was Elbridge Colby, and I remember reporting on this is months ago, where shipments of weapons were held up. Everyone said it was by Pete Hegseth, but it was actually by Elbridge Colby, because Pete Hegseth is just the face. He doesn't know how to do anything. So apparently this Elbridge Colby guy is the guy who stopped shipments without Trump knowing, without Congress knowing, without anyone knowing. These approved shipments to go to Ukraine. He stopped them and told them to turn back. And then the guys who were told to turn back called other people saying, hey, what the hell? We just were told to turn back. And it's like, what? No, by who? I don't know, And so this Elbridge Colby guy kind of got caught because he sounds like he's an idiot too. And those munitions ended up being shipped in the end. But he was trying to withhold them. Obviously working in the favor of Russia in the Russian-Ukraine war. Pete Hegseth doesn't even, he's just like laying in the gutter somewhere drunk, apparently. But a general in Europe who is the NATO commander, the U.S. European Command of NATO, his name is General Grinkowicz. His first name is Alexis. General Alexis Grinkowicz. Can you believe all these guys' names? What? Why do we got to have the names? Why don't you just have names like Coletti and, names that we all know, right? Greg Bovino. There's a story about him, actually. We'll go. I'm trying to edit in my head here. Let's see. We'll keep going. What has happened is all decisions about Ukraine seem to have been now bypassing the Pentagon and being put into the control of the U.S. European Command, NATO commander, General Grinkowicz. He's the one who said, yes, Ukraine, go ahead. You can send drones and missiles deep into Russia. Go ahead and do it. Trump tried to hold that back. Biden said, go ahead and do it. And then Trump said, nope, you can't do that. Because Trump, of course, is Putin's buddy. Putin put Trump in the White House, even in 2016 and 17, and again now. So Trump, he was asked about that, and he said, that's not true. It's fake news. Fake news, the Wall Street Journal, that loses. Even though they're also a right-wing entity. But Trump doesn't know what's going on. Pete Hegseth doesn't know what's going on. What is going on is that the Pentagon can no longer really have any say about what Ukraine can and can't do. It's really looking like the NATO commander of U.S. European Command is going along with the NATO side of things. Now it's NATO against Trump and Pete Hegseth. This is really, really good news for many reasons, one of which is that it helps Ukraine immensely, and there has been immediate and direct results of this command being changed. It also shows us that, yes, the military is working behind the backs of these people who actually were not elected, but are in power right now. Pete Hegseth, Donald Trump, J.D. Vance. There are things going on behind the scenes. Kamala, again, is back saying, yeah, she's not done yet. It's okay, let's move on to the next thing. Jack Smith, another one who's back, right? I wrote in my notes here, things got buried, but they're re-emerging. And the thing that is re-emerging ultimately is truth. Jack Smith coming back, Kamala Harris coming back. These people are coming back. Jim Jordan wrote a letter to Jack Smith saying, Jack Smith, you need to come in. You need to come in. We need to question you. We need to question you about all this stuff. You put the Epstein files and not the Epstein files. No, I don't want to talk about that. I want to talk about Mar-a-Lago and Jack Smith said, yeah, I'll come and testify, which is a big deal, actually, under oath for a guy in his position. But it has happened before, and Jamie Raskin was right behind Jack Smith saying, yeah, I want to do it, but I want to do it on TV. I want to do it publicly. I'm not going to go into a back room so that you can lie about what I said. I want to do it in front of the public. And then Jamie Raskin, Representative Jamie Raskin, wrote a letter also to Jim Jordan saying, all of these independent investigators or prosecutors that Jack Smith was in this regard, in the past, they have been brought in to testify publicly. So you should do the same thing with Jack Smith. Just solidifying it even more. Calling Jim Jordan's bluff. And, Trump starting to talk about Jack Smith again. He's crazy. He's demented. Jack Smith, Jack Smith, Jack Smith, Jack Smith. Thanks for bringing up his name again, Trump, because now he's back. He did an interview that scared the crap out of the GOP, Guardians of Pedophiles. And now they don't want him to testify anymore, at least publicly, because he's going to decimate them. The GOP just could not help themselves. They're the ones who brought up Jack Smith. They're the ones who keep bringing up Epstein files. They kept bringing up Epstein files for the last how many years? Virginia Giuffre, who came out with the book, Epstein's Survivor, the one who, Randy Andy was with when she was 14 years old. Maybe she was 16. I don't know. She was underage. And she wanted Trump to become president again because Trump said, I'm going to release the Epstein files. And she was like, Trump seems to be the only one who's going to release the Epstein files. I want him to win. And then Trump won. And then he didn't release the Epstein files. And then she committed suicide. I haven't heard anybody question whether or not she's committed suicide. And it's just kind of amazing that whenever we say she committed suicide, almost all of us think, but did she? How did she commit suicide? Did she fall out a window? Is that going on in America now too? Anyway, I'm not talking about that part of it. But it's amazing how a lot of these survivors, they were counting on Trump. They wanted Trump to win. A lot of them were Trump supporters. Not anymore. But they were, because Trump was promising them, I'm the one who's going to do it. I'm going to release the Epstein files. And now he won't do it. Wow. Other things that happened this week. But I do want to point out, though, how important it is about this Ukraine stuff. Okay, let's go into some of the results. I'm looking at the YouTube channel of Anna from Ukraine. Let's go back 10 days. Bankruptcy wave in Russia. This is many videos she's got lined up. I'm reading you titles of it. collapse. Russian railways announced mass layoffs. That was a few days ago, 8 days ago. A huge explosion in a big ammunition plant. You might have heard that news. You might have heard the explosion, apparently. But again, United States Western media is not talking about these things. But it was a huge, huge, huge explosion in a huge ammunition plant. Ukraine's blackout plan for Moscow. And then Moscow went dark a couple days later. Moscow in the dark. Ukraine strikes critical energy corridors. Putin, Budapest, Russia on fire. He was supposed to go to Budapest. 2 videos later, Budapest is canceled after a phone call with Trump. Trump said, it's a waste of time. Nothing's going to happen. Okay, you're the president of the United States, and I don't feel like working on that. Vanishing deposits, Russia's financial collapse. Breaking new sanctions from Europe are really hurting the economy. More explosions in Moscow. In Moscow. It's not just on the Western Front. Precise strikes, Russia deep. Ukraine fights back. Precise strike into Russia. That's because of this command being changed from Pete Hegseth and Elbridge Colby in the Pentagon out to U.S. European Commander in NATO, General Grenkowicz. Now I'm going to go to RFU. These are 2 different sources that I use, but now there are many. Some of their videos, it's crazy. This is more military focused. Revolt in Russia barracks. Russia is getting consumed by soldiers' mass shootings, self-killings, and mental illness. Nationwide blackout. Russians are deported en masse. Insane suicide operation. Their generals are sending their guys into very dangerous missions, and it's not going well. They're all dying. Tanks run over their own bikes. Crazy. Russians attack with 50 tanks and 50 bikes. It goes terribly wrong. Apparently, they ran over their own bikes. There are commanders executing soldiers because they don't think they're fighting ruthlessly enough. Russians kill own soldiers. There's footage. Russians execute their soldiers in the field for cowardice. Russia's advance rate drops 44% amid staggering losses. So Russia is absolutely collapsing. There are other experts, and there are a lot of videos you can find on YouTube that just came out today that are saying things like the Kremlin is collapsing right now. Putin is collapsing right now. The oligarchs have lost everything. They're trying to leave the country. It's a big deal. I'm going to go through a few other things. We've already run out of time, but I have more things on my list I think are very important. Letitia James pleaded not guilty in her arraignment this week. She came out to make a statement, a presser, and she couldn't even talk for minutes because there were crowds waiting for her out there, outdoors in New York, and they were cheering and saying, "We stand with you," chanting, "We stand with you, we stand with you," and she couldn't even get a word in. It looks like it was bringing her to tears. It was a beautiful moment. I saw the footage on YouTube, but the footage I saw was on Fox News. Do you think Fox News expected that? Or do you think that, now let's go to Letitia James, that vile, horrible person? And instead they had her on being cheered by fellow Americans. Power of the people. 12 million is now what people are saying happened last Saturday for the No Kings. And like I said earlier, just in Minneapolis, St. Paul alone, up to 150,000. 12 million. Record-breaking. Never anything like it happened before. Thank you for doing that, everybody. Adelita Grijalva. Mike Little Johnson now has used every excuse. She now is suing, and the AG, basically the state of Atlanta, or Arizona, is suing Mike Johnson to swear her in. And they're saying, it doesn't need to be the Speaker of the House. According to the Constitution, it can blah, 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 blah. And they put up a very good argument about it. And so she might get sworn in even without Mike Johnson doing it. She's pushing for it. Things are getting really interesting. You heard me say, Greg Bovino. It's the Bove. Greg Bovino. He is the border chief or something like that. And he's been going into towns along with ICE, and he's been telling ICE to use tear gas. So it's chemical warfare. Judge Sarah Ellis is saying that is chemical warfare on your own people. You need to come in and testify. And she's got other ICE people coming in to testify. Some of them are trying to not do it, and she's going to hold them for contempt of court. She's warning. So now we'll see what the Bovino does. Craig Bovino, you got to come in. Talk to us. And if he doesn't, she can hold him for contempt of court, both civilly, possibly criminally. That's kind of it. There was still so much more that happened this week. I have a whole thing about more Election Truth Alliance information. More stuff coming out about Florida. Of course, we talked about Minnesota. Maybe next week I'll take the time because the details are, I can clear them up so you understand what's going on with some of this stuff. Everything's just coming again. I say this all the time, and I feel bad that you're going to go, okay, yeah, you make us think that everything's going to be resolved by this time next week, and we keep going on week by week. I know that's what it feels like, but this stuff that's going on, we can now see it bubbling up from underneath. This information about bypassing the Pentagon in handling Ukraine and Russia, and then immediately seeing the results about Ukraine kicking Russia's ass even harder, and now these experts saying Russia just cannot afford this war anymore. Too much time has gone by. He was expecting it to last a couple of weeks. So even his measures trying to protect himself from it, they're just running out. And when Russia collapses, Trump collapses. So that's why I pay so much attention to what's going on in Ukraine and Russia and try and bring that information to you. I am sorry that our mainstream media is not doing that for you, so that you have to take the extra time to, you shouldn't even listen to them. Just come to my podcast. I'm not afraid to report it. I just want to say Ukraine is proving it's their will and their power and their passion for freedom that is going to make Ukraine come out of this. And Russia's not going to gain any part of Ukraine. Ukraine's going to keep all of their land. They're defeating Russia years long. That is the will and the power of the people. 12 million people, that kind of sentiment has crumbled dictatorships in other countries in the past, even in the very recent past. So let's keep it up. Let's keep the pressure up. This Epstein, I'm calling it Epstein information because it's like the Epstein files. What is that? All this information having to do with Epstein that the FBI and the DOJ has, but so do a lot of other countries, a lot of other people in other countries. It's all over the place. And people are starting to look at each other. You're going to do it first? You're going to do it first? We're living in interesting times, and things are going to get really, really interesting. I've always been hopeful, but man, watching some of this video of how ICE is treating people and things, it's hard. I know it's hard to watch, but we need to stay strong for those people who truly are being affected by this, and it's us who's going to save us. And we're all working on it together. I thank you for doing that, and I thank you for being here with me. I will be with you, and we'll get through this together. Take care of yourself. Do things you love to do. Don't let these idiots take any part of your joy away, any part of your life away. Keep doing the things you want to do in your life. Take care of yourself. Don't get too wrapped up, especially in mainstream media. It'll drive you crazy. I'll try and do my best to bring you information that they're not bringing you, to try and keep you informed. I don't know what else to say other than it's getting really interesting, and I'm feeling more and more positive all the time. 3 days ago, I was like, I don't even want to do the podcast. This is just so excruciating. And then looked into some things and found out this information, and it was like, wow, there is a lot to talk about, and most of it is good. So stick with me. Let's stick together. And again, I'll thank you one last time for being here on A Satellite View. I will speak at you next week.
You've been listening to A Satellite View with Todd Mikkelson. Go to toddmikkelson.com for links and more information.